Hey guys, Heidi Preet here. I am calling this video an attachment vocabulary video, but this is not official attachment vocabulary, like they don't talk about this in attachment literature. It's just a concept that I have been kind of mulling over in relation to how it applies to attachment. So a couple of weeks ago, I was reading a fiction book, and the main character in this book was talking about how as a child, her adoptive father would take her out into the wilderness and teach her how to kind of be tough and survive. And one of the things he told her was, there's a difference between toughness and strength. And what you need to be trying to cultivate in life is strength. But toughness is often kind of what we cultivate in moments where we are weak but need to appear strong. And I think that this is actually very relevant to attachment because I have noticed through attachment groups that I frequent, through reading the comments on my own videos, through talking about attachment styles to different people, that there is this bias to thinking of avoidant attachment as the strongest attachment style emotionally. Because they never seem to show distress, because they never talk about or reach out for help with their problems, people assume that avoidants are the strongest style. However, that is completely inaccurate. The strongest style emotionally is hands down, no questions asked, securely attached people. But the avoidant is absolutely the toughest style. And what that means is that they are able to endure quite a bit of pain without breaking, but they don't necessarily have the skills to integrate that pain into their awareness and make better choices because they acknowledge it. So in this video, I want to talk a little bit about the difference between toughness and strength and why it's strength that we really need to be trying to cultivate when we start working on healing our attachment style instead of trying to be tough and just withstand emotional pain without ever fully letting it in. So I wrote down kind of 5 differences that I've been thinking about that differentiate toughness from strength and how we can apply those things to attachment healing. So the first difference is that toughness is about enduring, but strength is about resolving. So when we have someone who has, let's say, an avoidant attachment style or someone who is choosing an avoidant response, often what they're doing is unconsciously denying that they're having an emotional experience whatsoever. So you might have an avoidant person moving through a breakup, a death of someone they loved, something really emotionally difficult, and they just don't feel what they think they should be feeling about that thing. And this is not their fault. It's often not what they have chosen. But it's this kind of hardwired toughness to their psyche. The body and the brain doesn't let the painful feelings leave the body and travel into the realm of conscious awareness. So you will often have avoidantly attached people who have really unresolved pains in their life. They might have someone they love who's died a really long time ago and they've never really felt anything about it. But they might still be getting triggers around it that they don't realize are related. Or they might be getting ill, or they might be getting unwell in other ways, whether that's through their mental or physical health, because they have not resolved the pain and the grief of early experiences that their body has never really allowed them to feel. Now, when you are strong emotionally, it means that you move through the appropriate emotions at the appropriate time. And obviously it's going to be a little bit different for everyone. There's not a linear nature to things like grief and bereavement and pain. But because those feelings are processed and integrated, they don't kind of surprise attack you later. They don't turn into illnesses in the body or mind. Having a securely attached mindset means you're able to resolve the pain and the grief and the challenging experiences that you go through and find some sort of meaning in them, find a way to make them make sense for you even though they hurt and you feel that hurt. And so you are actually able in both your body and your mind to move on from them and leave the past in the past and be present in the present moment. That is strength. But enduring through tough situations and not feeling anything about it is not strength, it's toughness. It's that denial of need, that denial of emotion. And again, this is not consciously chosen by avoidant spectrum types. This is often something that they kind of wish they could access. Like a lot of avoidantly attached people, especially once they start becoming aware of attachment styles, might really wish that they could process the emotions associated with certain things that have happened to them. But they need to relearn to do that, usually in a safe therapeutic environment. Because they're really, really tough and they're able to get through those tough moments, but they're not able to integrate the full impact and meaning of those experiences in a way that allows them to develop true emotional strength. So number 2 difference between toughness and strength is that toughness disconnects us from our needs, whereas strength accounts for and infuses our lives with solutions to our needs. So when you are dealing with something from an avoidant place, often there's this natural discounting of how you feel, of how other people feel. It's kind of all hard logic all the time. It's that attitude of like, facts don't care about your feelings, right? But in reality, facts have to account for feelings. Like when you study economics, for example, you study not what the most logical outcomes of certain buying behaviors are. You study the irrationality behind people's buying behavior. So if you just take emotion out of the equation when you're trying to figure something out, it gets really hard to predict what's going to happen because emotion colors so much of how people show up in the world and what happens in the world. And so if you are saying, I don't care about feelings, I'm not going to look at it, you're actually going to end up making a lot of faulty predictions because people don't behave logically, right? And you have to account for that. Actually, I have trouble saying that. I think there's a rationality behind absolutely everything that everyone does all of the time. And if you feel like someone is doing something really irrational, it just means you do not yet understand them deeply enough. And people will always be like, no, I do understand them, and that's why I know they're being irrational. Nope. If you think that they are behaving irrationally, you do not understand deeply enough, 100% of the time. This is not to say that people are always doing the right thing if we're looking at it from a moral lens. It also means people are not always making the most informed choice, right? So there can be problems, but everything people do, I believe, makes sense to them, given the very specific context they're in, given their entire past history, given everything going on around them at the moment, given their biology, their physiology. There is a rationality behind everything. But if you are trying to say feelings are irrational, so I'm not going to pay attention to them, you are missing vital pieces of information that need to be considered in order to make holistic and sound decisions. So that was a bit of a rant, but all of that is to say that toughness is denying you have needs, which again will later on come back to bite you. Whereas when you are strong, you're able to acknowledge, I have needs, I have emotional and practical needs, and I have to look at what solutions I can find that are able to sustain both sides of that spectrum, right? So I have to find solutions to the problems in my life that do not drain and deplete me emotionally, but that also do not drain and deplete my resources. So strength is not a matter of white knuckling through something and figuring out how to go without what you really want or need. It's about acknowledging all of your needs and figuring out what the best solution is, even if it might not make the most sense if you were to cut yourself off from needs. Because secure people know you can't really do that and not have major consequences, right? You can't deny that you have feelings, you can't deny that you have certain needs and still live a whole happy life. When you are cutting yourself off from any part of yourself, you are naturally weakening yourself because it's like you're intentionally creating a blind spot and a weak spot for yourself. And why would you do that? But toughness and just enduring things without finding long-term sustainable solutions to them actually makes us weaker in the long term because there are things that we want, there are things that we need that we are not getting. And that makes us a lot easier to manipulate. It makes us a lot more reactive in certain areas. It allows us to not really be in full control, right? Denying our needs can be a short-term solution in a lot of situations, but when it's a long-term solution, it actually slowly robs us of our strength and autonomy. Which leads me to my next distinction. Toughness involves both temporary and long-term repression, whereas strength involves short-term suppression and long-term integration. So there are going to be times in life where absolutely we have to put our feelings and our needs aside to get something done. That is unavoidable for anyone. But when we have, let's say, a secure attachment style, or when we are operating from a secure place, we're able to consciously go, okay, I have this need or this want that is really important to me, but for now I'm gonna have to put it to the side in pursuit of a greater goal. But I know that it's there, and in the long term, I'm going to find a way to come back and integrate that thing into my life. So for example, let's say you really wanna own a home, but you know that for the time being, it doesn't make financial sense for you to own a home. So you're just gonna rent for a little while until you earn the money to be able to invest. And then you're gonna make that conscious choice to reintegrate that need for stability and security and safety in the form of a permanent place to live. And so even in the period where you're kind of suppressing all of those needs, you know that those needs are there, and you know that you're gonna find a longer term way to get them met. Now, repression is different than suppression. Suppression is when we have something in our conscious awareness, for a while we choose not to attend to it, and then when it makes sense, we'll bring it back in. But with repression, it's about our wants and needs actually being buried in our unconscious mind in such a way that we probably can't even access them. So what this might look like, using the same example, is someone who has a need for stability and security, but it's so repressed that they don't know it's there. So they go from kind of living situation to living situation, maybe they're hopping all over the place, and they might feel off. They might feel kind of vaguely empty and unhappy, but not know why, because their need is repressed. They don't understand that they actually want that stability, that they're craving a sense of groundedness. And that experience of being kind of disconnected from your needs and disconnected from knowing what you want and what's important to you in life is pretty typical of people who are on the avoidant attachment spectrum. They might be really good at figuring out what's logical, but not really good at figuring out what they actually want and what's really important to them in life. Strength is understanding that you can't have everything you want at the exact time you want it, but when you're making any given choice, you're aware of which needs aren't being met, and you're forming strategies as you go for how to get those needs met in the future. Next distinction, toughness is about looking capable. Strength is about being capable, and this is a big one. I think that a lot of the time we have people who want to be seen as very strong, they want to be seen as very capable, and they think that what that means is not needing anyone for anything, and to be able to completely take care of themselves, to not ever need help. But what that actually makes for is a person who is lacking perspective, who is lacking resources that you can only really get through collaborating with other people, who is lacking feedback and correction that they could get were they to open themselves up to other people's thoughts and opinions. And again, in the long run, that might make you appear strong, but it does not make you strong, because a key part of strength is knowing what you don't know, knowing what you're not capable of, and then finding ways to be interdependent and to cooperatively source what you need from other people. So that might mean looking for people you can collaborate with who can even out the skill sets that you're not as good at. It can mean admitting openly when you don't know something and then allowing yourself to learn. It can mean approaching new situations with humility, because you're not embarrassed to admit that there's a lot you don't know, that you are constantly learning new things, and that you are also a perfectly normal human being who has a full emotional range, which means that sometimes you have an off day, sometimes you need someone else's help, sometimes you need to lean on the people in your life. And all of those things are the building blocks of becoming incredibly capable, right? And that actually leads me to the last distinction, which is that toughness hinges upon isolation, whereas strength hinges upon interdependence. So when you are tough and all of your vulnerability is suppressed and you can't access it, the only way to really keep existing that way is in isolation. Because to form healthy relationships with people, to be interdependent, to have a life that involves a lot of give and take, we need to be aware of our feelings, our needs, and our vulnerabilities. And we also need to be able to communicate those in safe situations. So tough people can only really be tough by being in isolation. But strong people kind of have their bases covered from a 360-degree angle, right? They know where their blind spots are, they know where their weaknesses are, and they have set up their environment in such a way that they have places and people to fall back on in those areas where they're weak, right? And ultimately, that allows for a much stronger person overall, because they have an entire ecosystem set up around them that helps them to meet all of their needs. So the way I kind of look at it is that toughness is a very kind of activated experience. Like, you always have to be kind of on and ready to defend yourself, because you don't know how to deeply care for yourself if things go wrong. But strength is a very calm experience, because you know that your needs exist in a more diffused way. Like, you have lots of people who can help you with lots of different things. So even if you kind of get stuck in one area of your life, you know that there are many other areas you can turn to. You have lots of support. You have lots of systems set up that keep you functioning healthily, but you also have lots of people who can help you when things go wrong. So you don't have to be kind of chronically on guard, right? You can relax. You can take more chances. You can be more flexible in your approach to things, because you are not existing in this kind of solitary way where you are responsible for meeting all of your own needs, so you can never really have other people helping you. And this is really hard. And this is not to say that having an avoidant attachment style is a moral failing. It is not chosen. The attachment styles that we form, we do not choose, right? And none of us are playing out our insecure attachment patterns on purpose. But it is such a misconception that not showing any emotional vulnerability makes one strong. That actually makes one the most vulnerable to really major upsets happening because they have never learned the skills that they require to integrate emotional upsets and make better decisions based on that integration. The emotionally strong person feels things, processes those things, and then makes better, more informed decisions based on having done all of that processing. So when we are doing attachment healing of any sort, it's important to remember that we do not have to swing the pendulum all the way in the other direction. If you are anxiously attached, your goal should not be to become avoidant and to be completely stoic and to never feel or show any emotion. The goal is to get to that middle ground where you're able to integrate both emotion and reason and find a way to live interdependently so that your bases are covered and so that you can be, again, truly interdependent, not codependent or counterdependent. All right, I think that's all I have to say for today. Thank you for sitting with me through my musings on that topic. I love you guys. I hope you're taking care of yourselves and each other. Let me know your thoughts on this video in the comments, and I will see you all back here again very soon.